Imagine you are handed two animals from opposite ends of the ocean. One grew up on the cold Alaskan seafloor. The other clings to rocks in warm, shallow tide pools, thousands of kilometers away. They come from different families, different ancestors, different corners of the tree of life. And yet when you set them side by side, you struggle to tell them apart. Both are flat, both are wide, both wear the same hard shell tucked over a folded tail, and both scuttle sideways on the same jointed legs. Nature, working in two completely separate places, has arrived at almost exactly the same animal. This is not a coincidence, and it is not a one-off. It has happened over and over across hundreds of millions of years, so reliably that biologists gave it a name. The name is Carcinisation, and it describes one of the strangest patterns in all of evolution. Because for reasons we are only beginning to understand, life on Earth keeps turning things into crabs. By the end of this, you will understand exactly why that happens, why the crab shape is so special that evolution keeps rediscovering it from scratch, and what this one weird habit reveals about the deep machinery of life itself. And the twist is this: many of the animals you call crabs are not really crabs at all. They only look the part so well that they fooled even the scientists who named them. Let's start with a simple question that turns out to be surprisingly hard. What actually is a crab? To most of us, a crab is obvious. A flat, roundish body, a hard shell, two claws out front, a bunch of legs, and that famous sideways walk. But biology draws a much stricter line. The real crabs, the true crabs, belong to a single group called Brachyura. The word itself gives away the secret. It means short tail. Because the defining feature of a true crab is not the claws and not the shell, it is what has happened to its abdomen, its tail. Think of a lobster or a crayfish. It has a long, muscular tail stretched out behind it, the part you eat, the part it flicks to shoot backwards through the water. Now picture a crab. Where did that tail go? It did not vanish. It got folded up, flattened, and tucked underneath the body, pressed flat against the belly like a little hinged flap. That is the real trick of the true crab. It took the long tail of its ancestors and packed it away out of harm's reach, leaving a compact, armored disc with everything vital hidden underneath. That tucked tail is the fingerprint of a genuine crab, and it is exactly what so many unrelated animals have independently copied. Because here is where the story gets strange. There is a second great group of crustaceans called Anomura. The name means unequal tail, and these are the false crabs. They include hermit crabs, squat lobsters, porcelain crabs, and some of the largest, most impressive crabs on the planet. And every single one of them, no matter how crab-like it looks, is not a true crab. They arrived at the crab shape by a completely different road, starting from a completely different ancestor. Which brings us to the most spectacular example of all, the king crab. If you have ever seen photographs of Alaskan fishermen hauling up enormous spiny crabs the size of dinner plates, legs spanning well over a meter, those are king crabs. The red king crab, the blue king crab, the golden king crab, giants of the cold northern seas, prized on tables around the world. They look like the ultimate crab, the biggest, most heavily armored crab you could imagine. But they are not true crabs. Genetically, they are hermit crabs that gave up the hermit life. Think about what that means. A hermit crab is that soft, vulnerable little creature that protects its squishy, spiraled abdomen by backing into an empty snail shell and carrying it around like a mobile home. Somewhere in the deep past, the ancestors of king crabs were exactly that, soft-bodied hermits hiding inside borrowed shells. And then, over evolutionary time, they did something remarkable. They abandoned the shell entirely. They grew their own hard armor. They hardened and folded that soft, twisted abdomen up under the body, just as a true crab does. They broadened, they flattened, and they became, to all appearances, a giant crab. Look closely at a king crab today and you can still see the ghost of its past. Its body is slightly asymmetrical, a feint left over from those coiled hermit ancestors, and it walks on fewer obvious pairs of legs than a true crab, because one pair is tucked away, reduced, hidden. The king crab is not a crab that got bigger. It is a hermit that became a crab, and it did it entirely on its own, with no help from the true crab lineage at all. Now, if this had happened only once, we could call it a fluke, a strange accident of one particular family. But it did not happen once. That is the whole point. It happened again and again and again. The porcelain crabs, small, flat, delicate creatures hiding under rocks and among the stinging arms of anemones, look for all the world like tiny true crabs. They are not. They are Anomura, close relatives of squat lobsters that independently squash themselves into a crab-like disc. Watch one and the disguise cracks. It still has a longer set of antennae than a true crab, and if you flip it over you find that hidden tail is not built quite the same way. It even feeds differently, sweeping the water with feathery mouthparts to filter out tiny food rather than tearing at prey like a true crab. It is a crab impersonator that evolved the costume separately, right down to the same tucked under abdomen and the same flat armored back, on a family line that split away from the true crabs an unimaginably long time ago. And this is a good moment to feel the sheer depth of time we are talking about. True crabs and these false crab groups did not part ways last year or a million years ago. Their lineages diverged hundreds of millions of years back, deep in the age before the dinosaurs, when the continents themselves wore different shapes and the oceans held different worlds. Since then, these separate branches of life have been drifting apart, changing, specializing, following their own long histories, with no contact and no shared plan. And still, out of all that separation, they keep converging on the same crab silhouette. When two branches that split before the dinosaurs both end up looking like the same animal today, that is not a small coincidence you can wave away. That is a pattern powerful enough to overrule hundreds of millions of years of independent history. The coconut crab is, astonishingly, a hermit crab as well, one that as a youngster still shelters in shells before outgrowing the habit forever and marching off across tropical islands, armored, enormous, and unmistakably crab-shaped. Even the humble mole crabs, the little barrel-shaped sand crabs that burrow backwards into wet beaches as the waves wash over them, are yet another separate lineage that drifted toward a crab-like build. And it is not only in shallow, sunlit water that this happens. Far down the cold flanks of the deep sea, on slopes and ridges that no diver will ever see, live the deep-water king crabs, spiny, long-legged giants that thrive in crushing pressure and near-freezing dark. They too descend from those shell-carrying hermit ancestors, and they too followed the same path into the crab body, out in one of the most remote and hostile habitats on the planet. From the tide pool to the abyss, from the warm island shore to the frozen depths, the same shape keeps surfacing, in animals that never met and never shared the road. Count them up, and a pattern emerges that is almost hard to believe. The crab body plan has evolved independently at least 5 separate times within the crustaceans alone. 5 different starting points, 5 different ancestries, 5 separate journeys, and they all ended up in roughly the same place, wearing roughly the same body. When biologists first realized this in the early 20th century, they were so struck by it that they coined that word for it, Carcinisation, defined as the transformation of a non-crab into something crab-like. It sounds almost like a joke, and evolutionary biologists do treat it with a certain affectionate humor, but underneath the humor sits one of the most important ideas in all of biology. That idea is convergent evolution. Convergent evolution is what happens when completely unrelated organisms facing similar problems independently arrive at the same solution. It is nature repeating an answer without ever copying it, because the answer simply works, and once you learn to see it, you find it everywhere. Consider the eye. A true image-forming eye, with a lens that focuses light onto a sheet of light-sensitive cells, did not evolve just once. It evolves separately in vertebrates like us, and separately again in octopuses and squid. Our eyes and an octopus's eyes look eerily similar, yet our last common ancestor was a simple, near-blind creature that had nothing of the sort. 2 lineages, oceans and eons apart, both invented the camera eye, because focusing light is such a powerful thing to be able to do that evolution reached for it more than once. Or think about flight. Insects, birds, bats, and the long-extinct pterosaurs all conquered the air, and none of them inherited wings from a shared flying ancestor. Each group grew wings on its own, from legs, from arms, from skin and bone and feather, all solving the same problem, how to push against air in their own separate way, or the sleek torpedo shape of a fast ocean swimmer. Sharks are fish, dolphins are mammals, ichthyosaurs were reptiles. They are as distantly related as animals can be. Yet all three converged on almost the same streamlined body, the same fin placement, the same tapered form. Because when you need to move fast through water, physics only allows so many good answers, and evolution keeps finding them. The same story plays out on land. Anteaters in South America, pangolins in Africa and Asia, and the echidnas of Australia all evolved into low, tough, long-snouted, sticky-tongued ant-eating specialists, each from a completely different branch of the mammal family, simply because that is what the job of eating ants and termites demands. Over and over, when the problem is the same, the answer rhymes. That is what carcinisation really is. It is convergent evolution caught in the act, over and over, within a single group of animals, all landing on the same design. The crab shape is to crustaceans what the camera eye is to vision, and the fin is to swimming. It is a solution so good that life keeps rediscovering it, which leaves us with the deepest question of all. Of all the possible bodies a crustacean could have, why this one? What is so special about being a crab? The answer seems to come down to that flat, round, armored body being an exceptionally good machine for a very particular way of life on the floor of the sea. Start with the shape. A wide, flattened disc is stable. It sits low and solid against the bottom, hard to flip, hard to dislodge by currents and waves. That same low profile lets a crab squeeze into cracks and under rocks, hiding from predators in spaces a long-bodied lobster could never enter. Then there is the armor and the tucked tail. In a lobster, that long tail is a liability, a big, meaty, exposed target trailing out behind it. In a crab, the vulnerable tail is folded away underneath, sealed against the belly, protected by the hard shell above. Everything soft and precious is packed into the center and covered over. It is a body that has quite literally pulled in its weak points and locked them away. And then there is the way a crab moves. That famous sideways scuttle is not clumsiness, it is efficiency. Legs arranged around a wide, flat bodywork far better carrying it sideways, and a sideways crab can dart into a crevice or scurry under a ledge far faster than it could ever move forwards. The compact frame turns tightly, changes direction instantly, and slips into shelter in a flash. Put it all together, the low stable disc, the hidden armored tail, the quick sideways escape, and you have something close to an ideal design for surviving on a crowded, dangerous seafloor, where the ground is your world and safety means fitting into the smallest, hardest to reach spaces. So when a soft-bodied hermit, or a squat lobster, or a beach burrower, or any crustacean finds itself living that kind of bottom-dwelling life, the same pressures push on it. Be compact, be armored, protect the tail, move sideways into cover, and step by step, generation by generation, those pressures shape wildly different animals toward the very same silhouette. Not because they are related, not because they are copying, but because the crab shape is what that problem looks like when it is solved. Scientists sometimes describe this using a beautiful phrase. They talk about the crab body plan as a kind of attractor, a shape that evolution keeps falling into. Imagine a landscape of hills and valleys where every possible body is a point on the terrain, and evolution is like water, always trickling downhill toward whatever works best. In that landscape, the crab shape sits at the bottom of a deep, wide valley. Roll a crustacean into that landscape from almost any direction, and it tends to end up sliding down into the same basin, arriving, once again, at a crab. The valley is so broad and so deep that lineage after lineage tumbles into it, but it is important to be clear about what this does and does not mean. Carcinisation is not destiny. Life is not on some grand quest to become crabs, and there is no hidden force steering it there. The crab shape is favoured, not fated. It wins so often simply because it happens to be an excellent answer to a very common set of problems, and it is worth remembering the flip side. Evolution can run the other way too. Some lineages that once had a crab-like form have over time uncrabbed, stretching back out, becoming less crab-shaped when their way of life changed and a different body suited them better. The valley is deep, but it is not a prison. The shape is a favorite of evolution, not a fate written into life. And that is what makes carcinisation such a perfect little window into how evolution actually works. It shows us that evolution is not random in the way people sometimes imagine, a chaos of accidents going nowhere in particular. Instead, it is shaped, guided, and channeled by what actually survives and reproduces. Given the same pressures, the same environment, the same problems to solve, life tends to find the same answers again and again, even in creatures that have not shared an ancestor for hundreds of millions of years. The crab is proof, walking sideways across the seafloor, that there are only so many good ways to build a body, and that nature will keep rebuilding the best ones no matter where it starts. So the next time you see a crab on a beach, in a rock pool, in a market, or on a plate, take a second look. That flat, armored, sideways walking little machine may not be a crab at all. It might be a hermit that shed its shell and built its own armor. It might be a squat lobster that flattened itself into disguise. It might be one of 5 separate experiments run by evolution in 5 separate places that all arrived at the same brilliant answer. The crab is not one thing. It is a shape that the ocean keeps inventing, a design so good that life, given enough time, seems almost unable to resist making it again. So here is what we want to know from you. Now that you know the truth, which of these secret non-crabs surprised you the most? The giant king crab that used to be a hermit? The tree-climbing coconut crab that can crack a nut in its claws? Or the whole idea that evolution has a favorite shape it keeps falling back into? Tell us in the comments. And if this changed the way you look at the animal kingdom, stay with us, because the natural world is full of hidden patterns like this one, quietly repeating themselves right under our noses.